Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Safey here with Anthony Broom on Thursday, April 17th, as we near Michigan's spring game on Saturday, noon kickoff. A lot of people will be there because it won't be aired on TV. It'll be aired 8 days later, next Sunday, April 27th at 11 a.m. after the NFL draft wraps up the day before. But we're excited to get to the big house. We'll break that down. We will be back with a video on Saturday after the game from the field, breaking down what we saw. So stay tuned for that if you're not able to make it to the big house. We're going to get into what to watch for in Michigan spring game. Danny Wolf declares for the 2025 NBA draft. Before we get into it, make sure to like this video if you're watching on YouTube. We need to get up to 300 likes again like we did on our last one. Subscribe to the channel here on YouTube and head to the Wolverine.com. You can use the promo code UM1 to get behind the paywall, get premium access for 2 months for just $1.50 a month, and perfect time to get in right now because if you can't make it to Ann Arbor on Saturday, we'll have you covered with all of your content. Anthony, excited to get back to the big house. It's been a while. Last time we were there, it was that 50-6 win over Northwestern.
That is true. And the other day, erroneously, I want to apologize right off the bat, essentially saying there was no buzz and maybe it was the least excited I've been for a spring game. Those are the words of a man who had a wedding reception this past weekend, and was still rehydrating, reintegrating into the world. It cannot be taken at face value. I am very excited to get our first look at this team, especially after, and if you guys didn't watch it, we did our spring game draft yesterday, which is on the YouTube channel. That'll come up again when we talk about some of the things we're excited to see on Saturday. But anytime we get a chance to, and I haven't checked the weather report. I'm usually much better about this, but if it's like it is today, where a little chill in the air, but the sun is out, you can feel the warmth of the sun through the chill outside. That's football weather, and if we get football weather on Saturday, I'll be pretty fired up for it. So. It's not going to be on TV. It's not going to be on the radio. So need to either get your butts down there or keep it locked here at the Wolverine.com because we'll have it. No disrespect to our peers, but I think we'll have it more thoroughly covered than anyone else in this market. So I'm excited for it.
I did want to lead with the weather and the format of this game. So that leads perfectly into it. It may rain a little bit in the morning. So dress accordingly, I guess, for that, especially if you're going to be tailgating. Looking at you, Austin Fox, who is holding his annual.
You said tailgating. I thought Westphalia.
Yes, Austin Fox and his crew from Westphalia, Michigan, will be tailgating, I believe, in the Blue Lot. So come join us. I'm going to try to swing by in the morning. We'll see what we got going on, though. High is 62, winds between 10 to 15 miles an hour. Sunrise at 6:47. So if you do feel like getting out there that early, go ahead. Sunset at 8:21.
If you're like John Borton, you'll get up that early, play 18, and then get over to the spring games. So.
Yeah, for a noon game, that's ambitious, but I wouldn't put it past JB. And real quick before we move on, I want to run down the format here of the spring game, but I want to talk about Iggy's Eggies, which is a great little breakfast spot on Liberty, 611 East Liberty. Amazing breakfast sandwiches, all sorts of stuff. I've gone a couple times. If you go there and show that you're a member of the Wolverine.com, just show that you're signed in over at the Wolverine.com. And again, you can sign up right now and make sure that you are a member using the promo code UM1. They will give you a free hash brown. So, and the hash browns they're big. They're really good. So go and do that. Iggy's Eggies at 611 East Liberty. So
let's do this. Let's tie it all together. Promo code UM1. It's going to get you 2 months of access to our site for $1. And that $1 is also going to get you a hash brown. So not only was it already the best deal in America, it's the best deal in America plus a hash brown. So take advantage of that now.
So you're getting paid essentially because a hash brown costs more than $1 there because they're big and fantastic. You're getting paid to become a member of the Wolverine.com in hash browns. So it's really the best deal in America times 10, 10x. But so go and do that. Yeah, there's Iggy's Eggies up on the screen. It's an awesome place. over
I
there
haven't
on
been
East.
yet. I've walked by. I think I've seen. Do you have a location in Detroit as well?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
somewhere in the Detroit area. Yes.
Okay. Well, I've seen both. Have not stepped in yet, so excited to do that.
Love it. Okay. Here's the format of the spring game. This is exciting because it is a game. They're canceling them all over the country. I think we talked about this last year. Michigan's still playing Sharon Moore. It's kind of in his DNA to do this, but a team will take the field at around 11:30. Kickoff is at 12:05. There will be 4 15-minute quarters. The clock will stop at change of possession or scoring plays, so it is going to run a lot. It's going to be quicker than a normal game. There will be a 2-minute timeout in the second and fourth quarters. Those will last 60 seconds. 15-minute halftime, 3-minute break between the first and the second quarter, and the third and the fourth quarter. This is where the fun comes in. Each team can run a maximum of 2 trick plays. So I'm guessing, right, if you're a coach of one of these spring game teams and you got players that are badgering you about doing some fun stuff, you're probably going to hit that maximum of 2 trick plays. So we'll probably see 4 in this game. All kicks and punts are going to be fair caught. There will be field goals and punts, but they aren't allowed to be blocked. So it'll just, whistle or blow, or they'll just have to kind of stand up at the snap there. Instead of onside kicks, this is maybe the best part, there will be a 4th and 15 play that has to be converted to keep possession. So if it comes down to the end there and someone's trying to retain possession of the football after a score, there will be a 4th and 15 play that they can convert on, and that is awesome. Instant replay will be in effect. Each team can challenge 2 calls per half, so that's a lot. But there won't be as many stoppages due to TV. But Anthony, your thoughts? I mean, we got a real game here in the 4th and 15. I just hope that comes into play at the end.
I hope to see it. I hope to see all of these rules exercised to their fullest extent. The one thing about a Jim Harbaugh spring game, I feel like on the fly he was making up rules or taking time off the clock, and there would always be some kind of quirk to that. I would love to see something like that as well. But hey, whatever, because this is like, let's call this what it is. It is a spring practice. They will play an exhibition game. Anything that adds the juice, we're talking the trick plays. You're incentivized to put in the trick plays now. You're incentivized, to try the 4th and 15 for an onside kick, which leads me to believe like they're going to try and make this as competitive and as worth watching as possible. Because sometimes, you get into, you see the starters early and then you start emptying the benches a little bit, and that quality of play just goes down. In the last few years, I feel like the physicality has stayed pretty high and the entertainment factor has stayed pretty high, but anything they can do to add a little extra juice, I'm all for it.
I love it as well. Let's talk about what we're going to be watching. I was going to say, what to watch for. I guess that's that's what's on the thumbnail of this video on the YouTube channel. But not everyone's going to be there watching. So I guess we'll just speak for ourselves and tell you what we'll be watching for, and then can kind of lead you in the right direction, maybe if you're going to be watching on TV when it airs, or if you are going to the big house, keep an eye on some of these things. And we'll give you some nuggets so that you're not surprised by too much here with what's going on with the Michigan football team on Saturday if you make it out. And that leads us to the quarterbacks. I mean, we have to start with that. There are 2 of them who are healthy. Sophomore Jaden Davis, freshman Bryce Underwood. Jaden Davis on the maize team, Bryce Underwood on the blue team. We'll see if they both play the entire game. I don't know how they would do it without having them both stay on the field the entire game, but might be a little bit of a risk. I don't know what. I mean, do you bring in Colin Kaepernick or something like that to do mop-up duty? I'm not sure. But I'll tell you this, when we see these guys out there, and more specifically Bryce Underwood, because it's our first impression. Jaden Davis played in the spring game last year, was in on a touchdown play in that Northwestern game the last time we saw a game at the big house. For Bryce Underwood, manage things at the line of scrimmage, look under control. And then, of course, everyone's going to want to see some of those dazzling plays. But, don't make big mistakes. Show that you look like a college quarterback. And I think he's going to do that and then some, certainly. But that's kind of the baseline for a freshman in a spring game. But a guy who is probably going to start your opener this fall, I think a lot of people want to see more. But keep it simple at the very least. Make sure you play smart football and manage the game.
This is where, again, not to keep bringing up Jim Harbaugh, though I know that's welcome here on this show, of course. I feel like if he was overseeing a team that only had 2 healthy quarterbacks, we'd be seeing him play quarterback at some point, probably for both teams.
What if we do? What if he shows up and plays quarterback?
Just runs out of the tunnel. That'd be awesome.
Number 4.
Yeah, I mean, what you're looking for with Bryce Underwood is just that he's functional out there. I'm not going to make, if he throws a pick or if he has a couple incomplete passes, like I'm not going to freak out over that. Like this is still a true freshman who, if I remember correctly, was young for his class. I don't even think he's 18 yet. Is that correct?
He's 17. He turns 18 in August.
Okay, so this is still as physically developed as he looks to be. This is still a boy playing, a grown-up man's sport. I mean, when you look at all these guys that have been in the Michigan strength and conditioning program, and some of these high school programs are comparable now in terms of at least getting them ready as much as they can. But you just want to see Bryce look comfortable and operate the offense. I assume they're not going to be live. They're not going to let these quarterbacks get hit. I think that's usually been the case anyways. But you want to see, I want to see how he responds when plays break down. I want to see him use his legs and get off the back door. So, to me, watching Saturday for both Underwood and really Jaden Davis too, because let's be honest, we're a hit away, at least as currently constructed, from him being on the field. I just want to see both guys looking comfortable and not overwhelmed. And I don't think that's going to be too much to ask for them. I think that the offense that they're playing in is going to be conducive to letting them both kind of cut it loose a little bit more. Again, and they're not going to give away, this is all going to be very vanilla, but I just want to see him look comfortable. I want to see him run around. I want to see him launch the ball down the field. It's almost kind of like a glorified, won't say combine workout, but I just want to see that skill set on display. I don't care what the stats look like. I don't care what mistakes are made. I just want to see the vision. Now, something that was kind of cool about last year's spring game is that, we know what Alex Orji was, but in the spring game, I thought they did a really nice job of showing what an offense under him could look like. And Bryce Underwood, obviously, leagues above that in terms of our arm talent. I just want to see the vision, I guess, is the best way I'd boil it down.
And remember, every play that's made in this game is a play given up by the other side of the ball. So, there's going to be a big play down the field. You really, before judging too much of it, one, and how impressive the play was, or two, how much of a concern it is for the defense, for example, is, all right, who was the DB in coverage? All those sorts of things. There was a deep ball touchdown last year by Davis Warren. There were a couple walk-on DBs back there. Not that it wasn't a great play and a good catch as well. I forget who caught it. Was it O'Leary maybe, or
Fred Moore had one.
He had one over the middle that he ran for.
Right. I think the other one was a couple of years ago. Peyton O'Leary was completely cooking Amorian Walker.
Yes.
When he had just switched to cornerback. So,
yeah, no doubt. So, yeah, it's like, okay, well, Peyton O'Leary was going against a guy who, couldn't stick at corner and never really earned playing time there. So, yeah, just keep that in mind as we watch these games. The pass game in general, wide receivers, that will be another thing. I think a lot of people, it's tied in with the quarterbacks, but people are excited to see that. I think the first impression in a winged helmet for Donovan McCulley, not his first time in the big house, of course, started at quarterback against the Wolverines in 2021 for the Hoosiers, and then started at wide receiver in 2023 and actually threw a touchdown pass on a trick play in that game. Didn't throw one when he was a quarterback for Indiana against Michigan in the big house in 2021. So him, just, Fred Moore looks bigger. Some of the other guys that are emerging, they got a lot of wide receivers on this team, and we'll see which guys stand out. Certainly, we'll talk about freshmen a little bit later on their own, but you do have a couple really good freshmen that are standing out in that group that could be factors as well.
Wide receivers I'm really interested in because I think I could see a scenario where the spring sort of talks them into maybe not going after one in the portal, which I still think they will add one somewhere, but we've heard a lot of good things about Donovan McCulley, and it seems like there's a lot of credence to the idea that, this something can be unlocked with the guys they already have, based simply on a new play caller, based simply on a change at quarterback, competency at quarterback as a baseline. So I'm excited to see what they do, especially when, we have, you flip, you just talked about how usually when good things happen in a spring game, the flip side is that there's a guy on the other side of the ball that didn't make a play. I have questions about their cornerback situation. Is Jair Hill ready to be, a top end guy? Is Shamari Earls ready to play? And I think the back and forth between those two position groups is going to be really interesting to me. I think that there are scenarios in play where they have what they need on both sides of the ball in that matchup already. But again, we talk about truth serum all the time too. What they ultimately wind up doing in the transfer portal will tell us how they feel about both of those groups. But the guys that they have already are going to be out there Saturday, and I'm excited to see them compete.
Usually, if you're a really good DB as a freshman, about halfway into your freshman year, you start to contribute more, earn more playing time, and that can be valuable because DBs get banged up. You need somebody to step up, and usually they're ready by about that halfway point. If you're really, really good, like a Will Johnson in 2022, we saw that from him. I think the same thing could be true for Shamari Earls. I don't think you want the pressure on him where he has to come in and start right away. But I also think you have, Zeke Berry, Jair Hill, if they stay healthy, probably your two outside starting corners. But what I do notice from freshmen that are good or have promising futures is that they look good in spring games right away. Because, team split in half, a little more comfortable of an environment. You're in a little bit more base defense. You're not doing as much. And, again, just the competition's, not as high as it is in a real game. So, Shamari Earls, if he could pop in the pass game, defending the pass, I think that would be really nice to see. Who's playing at nickel when you think about the defensive backs as well, because you hear so much about all the guys rotating in. Okay, well, for a given snap in a game, only one of them is going to be able to. And they have a lot of time to determine who those guys are going to be, but that'll be something I'm watching on the defensive side as well. The new offense, just in general, AB, probably keep it pretty vanilla, I would imagine, on Saturday. The funny thing is last year when Wink came in and we were like, all right, we probably won't notice any differences, whatever. He threw the kitchen sink out there probably more than most D coordinators in a spring game. He was dropping defensive linemen. He was blitzing defensive backs. So, I think Wink's going to bring it. If you're Chip Lindsey and you want a little bit more of the element of surprise for the start of the fall season here, probably keep it more vanilla. It's more important to do that, I would say, on offense than defense. But we're going to see some differences, right? Samaj Morgan was talking last week about more 11 personnel. Benjamin Hall, before he transferred out, was talking about more screen passes, more involvement for the running backs in the pass game, all those sorts of things. Hogan Hansen, very pleased with the way they're using tight ends. So we will see some differences, I think, but I think we're also going to see them run the ball a decent amount and Max Bredesen, rattle some fillings and all those good things too.
Rattle some fillings. I like that. I think that, like you said, it's going to be mostly vanilla. At the same time, I think that a lot of what they're in the process of doing is marrying what Michigan has done in terms of owning the line of scrimmage, running the football, smash mouth, all those types of things with, the creativity, the created explosive plays by Chip Lindsey. I think that what they want to do is they want to throw a lot of formations at you. They're going to throw a lot of different looks at you within those formations, out of certain looks. So they're not going to be operating with a full menu of plays in this game, but you want to see what are the tenets of what a Chip Lindsey offense is going to be. They get the backs involved in the passing game. They do take those shots down the field. I think at its core, when push comes to shove, Michigan still wants to run the football. And that's going to kind of be, I think this year, the path that leads them the most is running the ball and then feasting off of that if they can. You just want to see, again, like we talked about with Underwood, you want to see what the vision is. You want to see some of those shots down the field. You want to see guys getting separation and getting open down the field. You want to see, the offensive line block it right. I just think, spring games are for, the fans that come out. It's a free opportunity to watch competitive football inside the big house. But when the guys like us, we're covering it, this is for the nerds, right? I want to see just throw as much as you can out there and to parse through and go out there and compete. And that's, I think, with the Chip Lindsey offense, they are going to dial some things up. And like you said with the trick plays earlier, we're going to see some of that creativity on display, because if here's a theory for you. If they're limiting teams to 2 trick plays apiece, if I have that correct, that might mean they have a nice little menu of trick plays that they've already put in there, which that perks my ear up a little bit. So it should be fun to watch.
The thing about these trick plays is you have to put them in Wednesday and Thursday, and they're separate practices, because otherwise the other team knows what you're doing. So, and I think the players probably get some input. That's kind of the fun aspect of this too, right? You saw on social media a week or two ago, I believe it was Jalen Hoffman maybe dunking the ball, and Peyton O'Leary was the hoop, and they said, possible spring game celebration. Like, they're working on that sort of thing. So, the fun stuff like the trick plays, the celebrations. We had a couple of years ago was the keg stand, right, with like Keegs and Barnhart and Zinter and all those guys.
Who else?
And yeah, exactly. And I'm guessing they have some experience with that form, that technique of doing a keg stand. And speaking of the offensive line, before we move a little bit more into defense, I know we've been both offense and defense. Just O-line position battles, I think, are something to watch. I would imagine you have Brady Norton, the Cal Poly transfer, playing left tackle for one team to start. Evan Link, the redshirt sophomore, playing left tackle for the other team. And, you kind of see how they compete. Some of the interior guys, younger guys who are emerging, like Jake Guarnera, how Nathan Afobe is kind of taking that next step, all those sorts of things on the O-line. I think that one of the problems with the O-line is that there aren't too many, battles that are like super tight, or at least that I expect them to be, which is why you maybe add some players there. But I think that the offensive line, and it's tough to judge too, because you're not necessarily playing next to guys that you're going to in a real game, but you're kind of watching for more moments, individual plays, than, trying to make some overarching conclusion, I guess, on some of these guys, because there is going to be some clunkiness.
You want to see how guys like Brady Norton handle their one-on-one with Derek Moore or TJ Guy. And, they've done a nice job, it sounds like, of getting everyone reps with the ones, good on good. It hasn't just been this stringent starting lineup, but, when it comes to your tackle situation, again, we talk about the truth serum. They're in on tackles in the portal, with the portal opening on Wednesday. So there's going to be some more competition. Now, the flip side of that is it feels like there hasn't been as much competition. I mean, they're always going to compete, but, we're not hearing about position battles right now. I think we've kind of heard a more sort of steady group of ones working in with a few guys here and there. At the very least, they're going to have to, attack some of their depth and their competition there via the portal. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to offensive lines, they're split up. I want to see guys win their one-on-ones. I want to see some good back and forth. You want to see just good, well executed. If you're climbing to the next level and you got to make a block on a linebacker, it's hard to have that cohesiveness when the two teams are split up, and we've been practicing for weeks kind of as a first unit, second unit, etc. But the offensive line, I think we've been talking about that all offseason. Is kind of the, I don't want to call it the albatross of the team, but if there is an inability to reach the potential we think this team could have, I think it's that position group that winds up wearing that. So let's see some good things, from Gio El-Hadi, who's back at left guard now. You want to see guys like Greg Crippen hold their own and function in the middle of that offensive line. There's a lot to look at here. I think really right now, probably 6 or 7 guys in particular. But, if someone steps up and has a big game, maybe that's a springboard.
And that leads us to the defensive line. And the defensive line is probably going to fare better, not only because it's a more proven experience, just a better position group. If you were to power rank the position groups right now, they'd be near the top, and the offensive line is a question mark. But you also just inherently have more depth there. So when you split the team in half, you still have a little bit more guys that you would trust going out there on each side. It's kind of interesting when you look at this defensive line, and there's kind of this one group that gained a lot of confidence for itself in the Alabama game on December 31st. Trey Pierce, Eno Etta, Dominic Nichols, Cameron Brandt, TJ Guy, Rayshon Benny getting to start that game. And then, of course, Derek Moore, who really had, he had been starting all along last season. In his first year as a starter, was a little bit more quiet on the stat sheet, but then he just broke out in that Alabama game and showed, okay, I can be the guy who gets the production, can go get the football, can, get a couple sacks like he did in that game. So, you have those guys mixed in with a couple new guys. Trey Williams, who we've heard a ton about, 320 pounds, will be wearing number 0. You won't miss him on Saturday when he's in the game. We'll see how long some of these top guys play. In general, that's another thing that really should be noted for every position. And then Damon Payne, the Alabama transfer. Trey Williams coming in from Clemson, of course. You have the mix of these emerging guys that feel like they're ready for these roles, and a couple guys from other schools who have had significant roles in the past but are looking for more themselves coming into Michigan. So that'll be exciting. And another thing I wanted, don't be surprised if you're at the Big House. Don't be alarmed. TJ Guy is now number 4, so that's who that is if you're not sitting close enough to see the name on the back there. That's one of those nuggets we promised we'd have earlier in the show. Groundbreaking stuff here, but interested to see the D-line go against the split offensive lines.
Yeah, if you're there watching and you're like, man, who's at number 4? He's a dude. No, actually, it's a guy. So
true. Well, he might be a dude now.
He is a dude. The defensive line, I have zero issue saying we're going to walk out of this game most impressed by the defensive line. 1, because I think it's their deepest position group on the team. 2, we just talked about how they're going to split up the offensive lines. And 3, I just think this format is conducive to those guys kind of eating and getting after it. So that's, you want to see, we know Derek Moore and TJ Guy are good. We know that Trey Williams and Rayshon Benny and those guys are good and will have prominent roles, but you want to see just how deep they are. I'm interested in seeing how that second unit at edge and maybe even that third unit, because you still have Devin Baxter's in that group. Lugard Adekpaye is in that group, who is a super athletic guy. The opportunities for those guys are going to be there on Saturday. Trey Pierce, Eno Etta, love to see what they bring to the table, because I think they're kind of going to be in the mix for that 2 deep. So we've been talking about how the defensive line, like how do you replace Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant? And we keep saying it's with depth. It's with this rotation of almost like hockey lines where you just keep subbing fresh guys out there. And I think we're going to get a feel for just how deep they are up front on that side of the ball. Because I think they go 2 deep at just about every position up front. But are there some spots where they go 3 deep at defensive tackle? Do they potentially go 4 deep in a couple of these spots? That's going to be what I'm interested in seeing. And it's going to be relative too, because the guys who come in that second wave will be playing against the second wave of the offensive line, etc. But you want to see how those guys hold their own and just what they have to work with up front.
Yeah, I think one of my takeaways from last year's spring game was the edge group is much deeper than we thought. It's like, actually, no, it's like 3-4 guys that they trust to go out there in game. So yeah, it can be a little bit deceiving. That's kind of the fun of it, though. And then you're kind of projecting down the road too, where a guy like Dominic Nichols wasn't really trusted to go in outside of 8-10 snaps in the Alabama game when other guys, when Josiah Stewart decided not to play. But we kind of knew that was possible because of the way they talked about him in the spring, fall camp, throughout the season. Really, he became one of Sharon Moore's favorites. And after talking to him last week, can kind of understand why. Seems like a great dude, great football guy. Transfers that we're excited to see besides Trey Williams, Damon Payne. I mean, you're looking at Donovan McCulley, who we talked about earlier, Justice Haynes at the running back spot. We've seen him play quite a bit of football, but this time in a winged helmet will be exciting at the running back spot. And we'll see how much we see from him and Jordan Marshall. I'd imagine 1 or 2 series for each of those guys, and then you kind of keep it moving with guys like Micah Kapana and other running backs. The Metcalf brothers, TJ and Tevis Metcalf, at the defensive back spots, where they're playing, they're both versatile, will be interesting. And I have a feeling those two just feel like guys that are going to make a couple plays in this game. Troy Bowles, linebacker, is injured right now, returning from an offseason cleanup surgery. Brady Norton, we talked about earlier, at the offensive line spot. We also have Caleb Anderson, corner from Louisiana. He's the last one we haven't talked about. So we'll see kind of where he looks like he is on the depth chart, all those things. And then Mikey Keene, the quarterback, injured right now, recovering. Sharon Moore said on BTN, I believe, that he is already throwing or close to throwing. Is that right, Anthony?
He said he was supposed to start throwing this week. So
okay. So that's good news. Let's move on to the Michigan freshmen. We talked about Shamari Earls at corner. We talked about Bryce Underwood at quarterback. We talked about a couple of the wide receivers, Jamar Browder and Andrew Marsh, earlier. Nathaniel Owusu Boateng has also received some buzz here this spring. I know he didn't get cleared till into spring ball. Missed last season, his high school senior season, with an injury. So we'll see. Sometimes they're a little bit more cautious with some of those guys. He's going to have a long career here. You don't want to rush him into any sort of situation that he's not ready for yet. So we'll keep an eye on that. Andrew Babalola, he was the number 1 overall pick in the spring game draft. We don't know the format, right? They might have split up the starters first and then started drafting the other guys, or the coaches may have, understood that he's going to probably play the majority of the game, so they want to get him on the roster. But he's going to be an interesting one. 6'6", 300 pounds at tackle. Your thoughts on some of these freshmen? They, usually a few of them pop. Doesn't always mean anything for the rest of their career, but there are certain guys I think that you can kind of tell it's a little bit different than the others.
Well, with Babalola, this is a scenario you didn't throw out there. Maybe he's the best offensive tackle on a team that doesn't have many of them.
It's possible.
Something to think about.
Doesn't seem like that's how they've been talking, but
it doesn't. But maybe he's their little secret too. I don't know. Number of ways that could go. Maybe they got a trick play in mind for him, like a Penei Sewell sort of pass or something like that. I don't know. Who's to say?
I would love to see that.
The freshmen, I think the freshman wide receivers to me are the ones I kind of circled to look at, because Jamar Browder, I think the first day that we were in Schembechler Hall talking to players or coaches, they immediately said he was the guy who really kind of made the first wow play of camp. And there was this push this offseason to add more size at wide receiver. I think they've missed, and Sherrod Morris talked about this before, since Nico Collins left and he was kind of that jump ball guy that they had down the sideline. They really haven't had a guy like that. So Browder is someone who was a late bloomer in high school. Hopefully that arrow just keeps pointing upward, because that would be huge for Michigan's offense. But he and McCulley are kind of 1 and 1A in terms of the guys I'm most excited to watch. Andrew Marsh, now that, and again, we've talked about Tyler Morris a few times, tore his ACL transferring to Indiana. Sucks. Sorry to hear that, but that does leave a spot at slot receiver, which Samaj Morgan, we know, will kind of fill into a certain extent, but Andrew Marsh is going to have a chance to do that too. A guy that I think has a chance to be a nice little safety valve over the middle of the field in the years to come. Always kind of liked him when the guys would report on him on the recruiting trail. So those two in particular, Marsh and Browder, I think I'm watching the most closely, especially, given that they're freshmen along with Bryce Underwood. They're going to grow alongside of him. And then how does Bryce's presence help those guys get those opportunities too? Because great quarterbacks make great wide receivers. I'm a firm believer in that. So those would be the two for me. Earls, we've heard a lot about. Even back to last fall, EJ has comped him pretty comfortably with being as good or maybe right up there with Will Johnson in terms of guys he's covered at that position. So extremely excited. It feels like the last few freshman classes haven't quite had the juice, namely that 2023 class, which kind of now looks a bit not great in hindsight, but there's a lot of juice. And I think a lot of future foundational players in this recruiting class, or in this 2025 class that they brought in now with the portal and all these types of things. How many of them will stick around? We don't know. But in terms of Saturday, my focus is at those wideouts.
Yeah, the 23 class was like thrown together late, right? A lot of guys that they kind of weren't maybe thrilled about adding, but decided to say, okay, yep, you can go ahead and commit towards the end of the cycle. Not going to name names there, but that was certainly the case with some of them. And a lot of them are gone now, which is fine. And then 24, probably a little underrated, with some of the guys who could impact this season. And then 25, just one of those legit like Michigan football freshman classes, recruiting classes that are coming in. So those guys will be really exciting to watch on Saturday. I'd imagine a lot of them will get time as this game goes on. So I think I'm ready to move it over to basketball if you are, my friend.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there are people that think we don't talk enough basketball that would love that. So here we go.
No, there's nobody like that. Let's talk Michigan basketball. Danny Wolf, Michigan's 7 foot, 250-pound forward/center, has declared for the 2025 NBA draft. Gave an awesome farewell graphic on social media yesterday. I mean, a one-year guy who was just so fun to watch and endeared himself to the fan base, grew up a Michigan fan. He said, going to the Final Fours and all he wanted was signed basketballs and all this sorts of stuff growing up. Was recruited as a walk-on to Michigan, didn't earn a scholarship offer, ends up going to Yale for 2 seasons, but the 1 year at Michigan leaves his mark. It looks like he's going to be a first-round pick. Looking at mocks this morning, ESPN's latest mock has him going number 19. Bleacher Report has him going 21. Sports Illustrated 29. Yahoo number 20. So good luck to Danny Wolf, and Michigan has already brought in some. And this was expected. They brought in reinforcements in anticipation of this. It was just a matter of time, and that front court, depending on what Yaxel Lendeborg could do, should be pretty loaded. But good luck to Danny Wolf, and his next step will be following the combine and all that sorts of stuff.
Yeah, you hope maybe that, and it's not surprising. I mean, we could say it in hindsight now. It just feels like when he gave the press conference he did after they lost to Auburn, just a flurry of emotions, and it felt like that was where it would end. Which is, I mean, he's earned that. He deserves that. Now you hope him staying in the draft keeps him in the first round, and maybe that just pushes Yaxel Lendeborg down a spot on someone's draft board now that they know that Wolf is staying in. So we'll see what happens there. They've got their Wolf replacement if Lendeborg decides to stay, which I still feel pretty good about that. We'll see what the process provides. But Danny Wolf, there was we get to Big Ten Media Days last year in Chicago, and just kind of moseying around. And I think I had stepped out from the room at some point, just walking through the hallway, and I had overheard someone say, like, yeah, that Wolf guy from Michigan's really good. He might be like a first-round pick. And I'm like, really? I'm not even sure if he's going to start. They have 2 7-footers. Like, are they going to rotate? At the time, we didn't know really what they, we knew that they would probably play together, but we didn't know to what extent, and that it kind of played out that way. And not only was he really good, he was really sort of the straw that stirred the drink for this Michigan team. On the nights he was on, they were incredibly difficult to beat. So Danny Wolf's presence alone, I think, changed the outlook of Dusty May's first season. And now the math changes, the calculus changes a little bit in terms of what you need from the guys on the roster. But this is not a surprise at all. And there are always people have been doing this back. They did it even when Trey Burke was a sophomore, just had the season he had. Oh, he's not ready. He's not going to, he's got to improve on this. He's going to got to improve on that. And that's always been just fans coping with the idea that if a player's not a completely finished product, they need to come back to school. I think Michigan guys have had a pretty good feel about when it's time to go or not. And for Wolf, with the skill set he has, and for the NBA being the weird league it is, in that it seems like the older you are, the less interested they are in you. Danny Wolf made the right decision, and I'm going to be really excited to see how he performs at the next level, because that spacing is going to be a little bit more. I think that he does things that I don't necessarily think shine all the way through at the college level. I'm not going to sit here and say he's the next Nikola Jokic or anything like that, but Danny Wolf has a bright future. I'm excited to see how he how he fares.
Well, they played a Taco Bell ad during Nikola Jokic's draft selection, so
Yeah.
no one thought he was going to be the next Nikola. I'm not, projecting that either, but yeah, it'll be interesting. Like, do I think Danny Wolf would have benefited in his development from another year at Michigan? Yes, but how much does that allow you to move up in the NBA draft next year? Probably not all that much. I would imagine you could get yourself into the lottery, but there's a risk of injury and all these things. And if you get a first round grade, it feels like you go. That's just kind of the way it is. And I think that Michigan, may have even encouraged him to do so. He averaged 13.2 points, 9.7 rebounds, 3.6 assists, and 1.4 blocks per game last season. Those 9.7 rebounds and whatever it was at the end of the Big Ten regular season led the Big Ten. And it was the first time a Michigan player has led the Big Ten in rebounding since Chris Webber in 1993. Webber was over 12 rebounds per game that season. So Danny Wolf doing something, making history, first time in a long time. The way he rebounded, the way he was a playmaker for this team was his best attribute. And I think this quote, too, Anthony, is probably something, this quote was delivered on Wednesday from Danny Wolf to ESPN. But it's a sentiment that Danny Wolf could tell Yaxel Lendeborg, or Dusty May could relay to Yaxel Lendeborg and future recruits. And probably one of the reasons why Yaxel committed to Michigan is this is a quote from Danny Wolf. "This season exceeded all expectations. We had an awesome year from a team standpoint. I didn't know what I was getting myself into with a brand new roster and coaching staff, but Dusty May had an out-of-the-box plan for my development with unique style of offense that allowed me to play my game. I wouldn't be in the position I am today without them letting me showcase my skill set and developing me into the player I am today." I mean, he was not necessarily a draft, projected draft pick coming out of Yale, but leaves Michigan a surefire pick and potentially in the first round. That's the buzz right now. I mean, that role was perfect for him to showcase he could play next to another big like that. It really be like a 7-foot guard was everything for showing the NBA what he can be.
Well, that Dusty May saw that too, because I'll be honest, I didn't watch a whole lot of Wolf at Yale other than, we all saw them beat Auburn in the NCAA tournament last year. I didn't know he was capable of that. I don't know that Dusty May to a certain extent knew he was capable of that, but he did see something to suggest that he could be that guy. For all intents and purposes, like Trey Donaldson was their starting point guard. Wolf was kind of like their backup point guard. If Donaldson wasn't on the floor, he was bringing the ball up a lot. And he was doing that even when Trey was on the floor.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. There were times Trey would be able to take a quote unquote break, while he was playing on offense, which he needed at times because of the minutes he was playing. And Danny Wolf could carry that load.
Yeah. And defensively too, I was very impressed because, you think back to games where did they throw him at Ace Bailey in that first game at Rutgers? And Bailey, other than having a highlight dunk, didn't do anything in that game. Danny Wolf kind of put the clamps on that guy. And there were a couple nights out in the league where he's drawn the toughest assignment, one of these guards or wings defensively. And those guys didn't do anything. So he's versatile. I think he defends well. I think that from a conditioning perspective, I think could probably even get a little better there. That's not to say Michigan's strength and conditioning wasn't super high quality, but Danny Wolf is, I think you can be a foundational player for a program by only being there in year one. This is a guy where he's proof of concept now. He's proof of concept. Like, if I bring you in, I have a plan for you. And if it works as well for you as it did for this guy, you're going to the NBA. And whether that's going to be at, with the bigs that they bring in or guards that they bring, whatever it is, Danny Wolf is proof of concept that Dusty May finds talent and develops talent and gets you to the NBA. And I'm excited to see how he fares.
For sure. I can't decide between what the most surprising aspect of what Danny Wolf did last year was. Was it the playmaking? Probably. But the defense, as you mentioned, was just as impressive. The way he was able to guard wings and guards at 7 feet and move his feet really well. It was kind of a recurring storyline on this podcast throughout the season, but I kept talking about it, how I loved when he would get switched on to Braden Smith or, a point guard, because that guy early in games would always think that they could take Danny Wolf. And then they realize, after a few possessions that they couldn't. And next thing you know, Braden Smith's waving over a guy. How often do you see Braden Smith doing that? The Big Ten Player of the Year, waving over a teammate. Hey, take the ball. Let's try to run something else and get this guy off of me. So, that's just great film that he showed. And this quote as well from Danny Wolf to ESPN. The biggest emphasis for me was being able to defend power forwards. That was a deal breaker, allowing us to play in 2 big lineups with another 7-footer. Once I showed that I could defend on the perimeter, I was able to start expanding every part of my game. That is true. I mean, that's a great quote, because the only reason why that worked and was sustainable to do that on offense, which was working, is because they could do it on defense and switch 1 through 4 the way Dusty May wanted to do, coming in and play a little bit different than what you see typically night in, night out in the Big Ten. And again, we're going to be waiting on this, but Yaxel Lendeborg can do the same exact thing at 6'9" and allow Michigan to play a similar style really on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, it's like I said before, it's entirely proof of concept. I think it shows that when they like you, when they identify you, it's not just because you're a good player, it's because you fit too. And you do things, and they think you might be able to do things that you weren't even sure you could do yet. And it's not going to look the same. If Yaxel Lendeborg comes in here, he's not a Danny Wolf clone. I think that he is a little bit more of a traditional 4, not necessarily a guy that is a backup guard or a secondary ball handler, so to speak. But, the fact that they have a plan, that they have the system in place to, I think that obviously, we know what a Dusty May team is going to be. They want to get up and down the floor. They want to get as many possessions as possible. They want to shoot a lot of threes, but within the confines of that, which it's not really a confine, they have multiple different ways that they want to, and they can build this out. Because I think they're of the belief that if we just get good players in here, we're going to find something that works for them. So, I think what they did with Wolf this year was incredibly affirming. I think to a lesser extent, because he was a known commodity, what they did with Vlad Golden this year was extremely affirming. And then you see, like, Nelly Davis was on an Arkansas team that surprisingly made a bit of a run. Elijah Martin at Florida Atlantic goes to wins a national championship with the Gators. So
key piece on that team.
Key piece. So these guys that Dusty May has his fingerprints all over their development, whether they were at Michigan or not, we saw guys that have been in his presence thrive this year. I think just about all those key pieces made it into the second weekend of the tournament. So, and beyond. So incredibly, it kind of goes back to just incredibly lucky that Michigan landed this guy. I think he landed one of the best coaches in America, easily the best head coach of the last cycle. And, we'll see who the next Danny Wolf is. Maybe it's at another position. Maybe I can't even really speculate, but maybe Marez Johnson finds some range from outside, and that, unlocks the next level of his game. Ade Mara is someone who some people in the league think could have been a first-round pick this year or might be next year. So there's talent here. They're going to find ways to use it, deploy it, and Michigan's incredibly fortunate for that.
The talent evaluation piece is one of the most impressive things Dusty May has proven over his time as a head coach, really 7 years in now. You spoke to it with all those guys who, only one of them, Vlad Golden, who also deserves a mention there, followed him, but the other guys were spread out around college basketball this past season. Even Nick Boyd at San Diego State had a pretty good year. Former guard for Dusty at Florida Atlantic. I don't know where he ended up. He re-entered the portal, maybe Wisconsin, I think. So we'll see him in the Big Ten next season, I believe, if that's correct. But, the way he evaluated that, and it started at a lunch that he went to with Danny Wolf in New Haven, Connecticut, where Yale is, by the way, pizza capital of the world. Go to Sally's a Pete's if you're out there. My brother lives nearby. He sold it to him, and Danny wasn't necessarily convinced either. It's like, hey, we got this other 7-footer that's coming, and it all worked out really, really well. Stay tuned tomorrow for our Inside the Fort. We got Still continue to feel good about Namari Burnett. His chances of coming back for Michigan next season. Keep it locked at thewolverine.com for not just that, but Michigan spring game on Saturday, 12:05 official kickoff if you're going to be at the Big House. If you're not, we got you covered at thewolverine.com. We'll have video content, written content, message board. Use the promo code UM1 right now for 2 months of access for just $1. And we will see everyone next time.